Hi everyone, welcome to Healing Connection, where we can be your supporting light for better mental health. This is Angela.
Hi, I'm Natisha Giles.
Today we have Melanie Singh with us for an exclusive interview to share her story and word of wisdom. Welcome, Melanie.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me.
So before we get started, I'm going to introduce Melanie to everyone. Melanie was born in South Africa and raised in Canada. Together with her husband, Tony, they have 3 grown children and 1 grandson, who's 9 years old, by the way. They have led churches in Canada and throughout the United States. She has been in ministry since 1991 and has served and taught thousands of women all over the world, including Russia, Asia, Africa, and North America. Her passion is helping women overcome the negative messaging of the past and embrace the truth about God and His words. She and her husband currently serve as evangelists and women's ministry leader for the thriving Ottawa Church of Christ. Melanie has successfully completed the ICOC Peacemakers program in both conflict dynamics and mediation. She has partnered with the training program to facilitate workshops promoting healthy conflict resolution in the local church and globally. Melanie is known for her deep insight and ability to connect with any audience. Wow. Well, welcome, Melanie. So I have known you for many years, and you have gone through lots of challenges in your life. Would you share with us some of the obstacles you went through and how you overcame them?
When I was thinking about this question and how to respond, I think it's difficult to kind of share without giving a personal example. But, my origin story, growing up in apartheid South Africa and then immigrating to Canada, a lot of that even shaped how I think and my worldview, right? And so being the only girl and, a family with 3 kids and 2 of those being boys, that also kind of shaped how I thought about things. And then identity-wise, I think both racially, ethnically, all of those kind of things, with the framework that I grew up with, being in a new country, shape how you think and feel. And so I, without getting into a lot of detail, I think I grew up being a very sort of quiet person and much more an internal processor and observer than I was being involved, I think, in things. And I think I was the type of person that felt things really deeply, but was very tentative to share those deep things with people. And I would even go so far as to say insecure to share those with people. And so there were a couple things that happened in my life, I think, that triggered some paradigm shifts for me. And one of them was at the age of 19, getting pregnant with my first son and not being married. That was a paradigm shift for me and really changed the trajectory of my life, not just being a single parent, but really leading me on a faith journey, and began really a development of not just faith, but internal processing and identifying my origin story and how it affected my future, how it affected how I thought, how it even led me to this place. And that coupled with my faith journey and experiencing God in a very different way than I'd grown up with, I think really helped me. But I think being pregnant in what was that, in the 1980s, in a very conservative family, where getting pregnant was sort of a disgrace. It's not like it is today, where where people are more accepting of that. But getting pregnant was a disgrace for my family. It was not a thing that anyone was sort of anticipating. And so I think there was a great deal of shame. There was a great deal of difficulty that created between my relationship with my parents and my siblings. And so I think that in me really highlighted my lack of self-worth. And I think I began to internally identify with the fact that I had really low self-esteem as a woman, and placed a lot of my value and my self-esteem in my relationships, particularly with men. And so all of this sort of was being identified through this experience, but I didn't have the tools to process. I didn't really understand what was happening with me internally. I think the external stuff was difficult. And of course, I just had to deal with the external stuff, but didn't have the language or the skills or the tools to process what was happening. So I think that creates wounds that leave an impression and shape your further relationships, which it did in my life. And I mean, obviously it wasn't this isolated incident. There were contributing factors from my childhood, but it was a paradigm shifting experience. And so I knew that I had to figure this out. So I was about 21 years old. And I knew that I had to figure out what was going on, and not just be able to overcome, but where did it come from? It didn't just come from this experience. Why do I feel this way about myself? And how can I grow? How can I move through this to become, sort of a whole, confident person? And so that really began a journey of process and development for me that I still continue to this day. So I don't know if that completely answers your question. I do know in the process of dealing with this specific situation, I learned that my circumstances can be broken up into sort of what's external and what's internal. And there's an external processing that has to happen just based on the facts of your situation, right? What do I do? How am I going to finish school? All of those types of things. But then there's that internal processing, which is more of what I've sort of been describing here, that is honestly more important for my future health. That's, and that internal processing, I think, is that journey that began, but it's been able to be carried over into other situations and other circumstances that have been, again, paradigm shifting for me.
Wow. Your story is really amazing, and I don't even know what I would do if I was in your space, in your spot, in that time in your life. It's great to know that even with your obstacles, you've learned how to overcome them. It's really good to see it from other people. The next question is, can you give us maybe one experience where you turned your pain into purpose?
Okay, so what I'd love to use a more current situation, right? Because I think that circumstance that I mentioned, getting pregnant, was sort of this big thing that happened to me that sort of stopped me in my tracks and for me forced me to do some personal work on myself. Fast forward my life, right? I'm married, grown children. I've been doing the same job for 20 plus years with my husband, in partnership with my husband, and that's ministry. And through a series of circumstances, we had to resign from our position. The loss of my vocation, my employment, was one level of difficulty. But I think, and so just the external things that come with that, when you began this job in your 20s and now you're in your 40s and you've lost this job. There's so many things that come with that. But just the external things were, what are we going to do? We've only ever done this job for most of our lives. Does this mean we've got to move? For us, it was this whole idea of retooling who we were. Do we stay in ministry? Do we leave ministry? And for me, the personal loss of it was so great that I didn't feel like I could continue to minister to people. I actually felt like I have to move on. I'm not even in a place that's healthy enough to minister to people. So what does that mean? That means, gosh, you've got to literally reinvent yourself and find something that sort of fits the skills that you've developed, which when you look on a resume and you look at minister, that doesn't translate as simply as you might think. There's a lot of soft skills that are developed, but in terms of just hard skill and experience, most employees don't look at that and say, oh, wow, she's really whatever. So that was the external, how it affected our kids and their, all of that kind of stuff. But the internal was probably the greatest pain point, because our vocation was connected to our faith community. And our faith community was connected to our social community. And our social community was connected to our relationships. And so that loss, I went through things like feeling betrayed and feeling misunderstood, and for a good chunk of time just feeling like, did what I sacrificed my life for mean nothing? Did it just come down to a job, a paycheck, a role? Did what I give to people mean nothing after all of that? And there was a good chunk of time where that processing had to happen, and then just allowing myself to feel the loss of all of that, right? The mourning of this dream and vision that we both had for our lives, and now it's over. And not just for me, not just looking for a new job, but looking for a new dream and a new passion. And I'm very driven that way. I'm driven by vision and dream, and so looking for that was super important to me. So I took a lot of time to sort of process the loss and the pain of that. And then I think I had to sort of define how I felt about it. And one thing I realized about myself through this process was that I was responding like I was a victim that had no control. And though there were things about the experience that weren't out of my control, what I could control was how I responded and what I did with it. And that was really empowering for me. First, identifying that I looked at myself like I had no control, and I was just sort of in this defensive posture of responding. And I was like, no, I don't have to do that. I can actually own things, and I can own some of this experience. I can certainly own how I come out of this and who I become through it, right? Because it's any sort of pain experience can do that. It can embitter you, but it can also empower you to become someone new and different. And so that's what I chose to do through the process. I chose to kind of add to what I believe God and personal and emotional and mental development had taught me, sort of add to that tool belt some really deep, profound things. I chose to embrace support from an organization that was outside of my church family, which was huge for me doing that. And through this organization, I learned some new things that I thought, man, I can pass this on, and I don't have to live in this world where it was just my experience of pain. And so through that process, I was able to embrace ministry again and see that it wasn't lost to me, but embraced it in a different way than I embraced it when I was young. Because I was coming into it with all this experience, both professionally, but also I think emotionally, and more importantly, through my experience. And then moving here to Ottawa, I think because this sort of experience was so new, I was like, I want to help women deal with some of the sort of negative messaging that comes with pain, right? And trauma and your origin story. Because I think there's, for all of us, there's an internal narrative that is going on. And that narrative can be powerfully destructive, or it can be powerfully instructive and help us. But we have to shape it. We're not just passive observers to that narrative. We have the opportunity and the power to shape it by how we process things and how we evaluate things and how we develop and grow through difficulty. And so I was like, I want to help people. So how I turned that from pain into a purpose is I started a little group here. And it's a transformation group. And so it's this idea of, saying no. I'm not a passive passenger. I'm not a passive observer. I am an active observer to this narrative, and I can change it. I'm not a victim to it. Although there may be things in our origin story that are really painful things, that when we didn't have the language and didn't have the capability and power to change it, we perhaps were victim to it. But that narrative when I was 3 or 2 or 5 or 10 is different. I'm no longer, that person that's not able or doesn't have the voice or the power to change things. I can change that today by how I view that. So we've started with a small group, and we're working together, and we meet every other week. And hopefully through my experience, I can help these women sort of deal with things that have happened to them, and we can grow this group here in Ottawa, develop the tools necessary to grow in resiliency and, strengthen that inner person. So.
Wow, this is so powerful. Like, your experiences are just so rich. And I can say it for myself, I'm one of the beneficiaries that from your sacrifices you have done for your faith community since you were leading the Toronto church back then. So for me, I'm internally grateful for your effort and your sacrifices.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. I really appreciate that.
To be honest, I can sit at your feet and just listen to what you share for the whole day.
Thank you.
So Melanie, what are your top 3 words of wisdom you like to share with others for better mental health?
It's a tough one, 3 words. So, before I even say what my 3 words are, I think it would be disingenuous not to say that the bedrock sort of for me is my faith. It's really the thing that is behind, before, around everything that I do. It's kind of the strength I draw from to even go down this road. And so I want to say that because in my 50s, it's definitely, it's everything to me. And so having said that, I think the 3 things I would say is process, patience, and I equate patience and grace, together, and then passion. And process, because I think most people don't give themselves time to process their experiences. We just kind of go, right? It's like you have a loss. Let's say it's someone you lose that you love to death. You have the funeral, and then life forces you to just move on. Like you got to go on and go to work, and but we have to process. If we don't process, eventually that catches up with us in some way, shape, or form, right? And then through process, we need patience and grace. We need patience because there's no ABCs that are just going to fix you, right? And it a lot of times feels like it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes even more than 1 step, sometimes 3 steps back, right? It feels that way. And so just even the grace, giving yourself grace, not feeling like a failure as you try this. Because that word failure and success is kind of funny when you're trying to deal with some of these things. It's almost like you have to throw those words out the way that we understand them, because it can really be destructive. And then passion, and a passion to overcome, a determination that you can and you will, that you can. We all can. We've all been given this innate survival instinct. I think some of us through our experiences have just been so brought down or brought low that we don't think we can. And we really, God has made human beings so unbelievably resilient. And so just the passion to continue.
I love that. Yeah. Faith, passion, and process.
Yes. Process is the beginner. It's the beginning, right? It's so important. But it's funny, Angela. You are an inspiration to me with what you've done with the Healing Connection, right? You turned your loss of a loved one into a forum to help others process and help others have resiliency in their life. And even I love the idea that your organization connects people, right? It connects people in need to those who have the ability and the skills to meet that need. And it's an inspiration. So thank you for doing this and doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. Even on that, I feel like I've been going to different counselors for grieving process, but it didn't help until someone actually went through the loss of a loved one, connected with me. That's when I had a paradigm shift internally. Then I realized that connection is more important than any type of consultation.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think counseling and consultation, one of the powers of it is they give us sort of tools, healthy tools of managing our process. And I think the connection is that person that gives you sort of the flesh to the experience. Like there's flesh, there's meat on the bones of the counseling, the tools. And I think we are not made for isolation. We're made for community. We're made for relationships. And that the idea of walking with someone on that journey, it cannot be replaced by anything, right? It's crucial to me, to our journeys. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Well,
so much for being with us today and sharing your story. I was very inspired. I've been having a lot of issues when it comes to my faith in the past couple years, and just hearing that, even, I don't know, I guess with me personally right now, it's like I have faith, I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in the church anymore, you know? And that word grace that you brought up, growing up in the church, grace was taught to us to be undeserved love. And you saying grace, I'm thinking undeserved love to myself, undeserved love to everyone around me.
Wow.
So that literally, you said it and I was like getting chills, and I was so it helped me, you know, it helped me with my own faith, I guess. Keep up the great work with what you're doing with your community, your women's group, your family, your life. I can't wait to see where you go and where you grow.
Thank you so much. And I hear you with I just finished a class on the problem with faith and church. It's a real thing. Christian history, we don't always have a glorious history with the organization itself. And so I get it. I understand. I think it's a real thing, and people like me have to hear that and have to equip myself and not just say, well, it's your problem, you know. No, we have to look at ourselves as people who are ministering as a part of the organization of church and say, well, what is the issue? There's something there, right? So
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Healing Connection HC is a registered charitable organization across Canada. Our goal is to build a resilient community together. We offer free community-based programs such as Healing Connection workshops. Most of our works are done by volunteers. Most of our fundings come from donations. If you feel benefited from any of our free resources, we would love to have your support by going on our website to donate.
All the interview recordings will be posted on our social media and website. You will get notifications when we have exclusive interviews with amazing influencers in our community. If you haven't followed us or subscribed yet, go ahead to do so by clicking on our website, which is www.healingconnectionhc.com. Thank you all for listening. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.